All right, so thank you for joining us this evening. I'm Jo Stone and I'm an EdTech demonstrator and a lead professional for the Discovery Schools Trust. And this evening we're joined by Adam Lappage again, who is our online safety lead in Discovery Schools Trust as well. Obviously, Adam does lots of other roles as well, but tonight his focus is online safety, as you've probably seen from our previous webinars that we've already delivered. Tonight the focus is on why IT technicians are vital in combating online safety issues. Adam's going to talk about around that subject area, and then afterwards I'm just going to talk about generally why IT technicians are also very key to EdTech as well. So I'm going to pass over to Adam and let him start his presentation, and then I will continue afterwards. Thanks, Adam.
Thank you, Jo. Hello. Yeah, I'm here again. Welcome to this webinar on IT technicians. So I want to talk to you a little bit today about how the changing world that I've spoke probably about in previous webinars and what the effect that's now had on IT technicians and their role within schools. And it's probably something that Jo will probably touch on a little bit further when she talks about IT technicians in general and how that role has maybe changed a little bit. Sort of why are they so important? So what are the key issues? What do they do? What's their role in protection? What procedures as a trust we've put in place with our IT technicians, and something that you may want to take for yourself, you may not, but just give you a kind of a flavour of what we do at Discovery. Sort of what, you know, if we're looking for an effective IT technician, what does that look like when we're specifically looking at online safety? What kind of person, you know, is good at that role, and why that's important? So I'm going to start off sort of looking at, like I said, the changing world. So the reason, as I say, I want to talk about this is kind of look at the last, say, 10 years, and then it's shorter than the last couple of years as well, what's changed and why that's so important. So if we look at maybe the last sort of 10 years, you know, I've been a technician now for almost 10. And that evolution of what is the responsibility of a technician, I think, has changed quite dramatically. There are a lot of stereotypes, and I'm probably in that group as well, about technicians and this idea that we play video games all day, quite antisocial. We sit in a corner, we're like geeking out, talking about hardware, software, games. And to an extent, it's probably quite true. But there are certainly things that have sort of changed now, and I think when we're looking at technicians, we used to think of technicians as of, right, they're a break fix kind of role. You know, you go in with a problem, they fix it, you go. And I think maybe that's changed a bit now. I think the systems that we use in schools are a lot more complex than they've ever been. And a part of that sort of, role for IT technicians now is more about sort of facilitating and educating users on how to use the technology and make it more, accessible. If you consider that, a lot of the problems we now face, the average person can just Google them, and it's not always, going to get the right answer, but a lot of them, think about some of the people I work with who now, will tell me they've Googled that problem and that's how they fixed it, and it was all good, and that's that. Or they do the classic IT, turn it on and off. So a large part of the role is more about, okay, well, the reliability is there, but how do we use it effectively? And a part of that, is about online safety, because it's relevant in that sense that when we think of technicians, we think of them, as I said, this break fix, but actually they're more educators now, and that is something that maybe we need to consider. Is that a natural skill? Is everyone got that within them to be educators, to teach people, or is it something that we might need to develop? And I just want to say that now, so you can think about it later on. We're going to talk about what makes an effective IT technician and what procedures we've put in place. And I think training is one of the ones that maybe is a bit underlooked when it comes to technicians and considering the responsibility they have. And I think the other thing, and it's probably the most obvious thing in the last 2 years, obviously the pandemic and how much now our pupils rely and are embedded in the online world. Obviously, look, these webinars wouldn't be taking place if we didn't have, this big EdTech agenda and the importance of technology education going forward. So, I can't talk for other schools, but I know within our own schools, we've dramatically increased the number of devices we have across the trust. You know, we've gone from some people, maybe you had your traditional IT suite, maybe you had a bank of iPads, to now, you know, a lot of our schools are looking at almost one-to-one, certainly in Key Stage 2. So that has then posed a kind of a change of role with technicians as well. You know, they had a very small number of devices to be concerned about with online safety. You know, the role might have been, oh well, if you look over someone's shoulder and they're typing something not appropriate, then maybe you deal with it. Whereas now you've got hundreds of laptops going across different classrooms, so that workload of checking and kind of monitoring is far bigger. If you add into the fact that then we've also been sending laptops home, and we still do this now in the holidays, and we send, you know, this year we've sent over 600 devices to our most vulnerable children, you know, over the holiday period and during, you know, the lockdown last year. Then, you know, it's quite common sense. The more laptops you send out and home, the higher, you know, chance of likelihood of online safety issues. And I know we found that, you know, we had to change the way we responded to online safety, because, you know, during the lockdown we had a far bigger increase in online safety incidents, which was naturally expected. As I say, you send that many laptops home, that's what's going to happen. So I just kind of wanted to sort of talk about how, you know, that new online world and the major impact that has had on our technicians. And we probably value our IT technicians more than we ever have now. I'm sure Joe will come and talk later about how invaluable they are. And I think maybe previously, you know, you could get away with 1 day a week technicians, and I'm not sure that's the case anymore. I think they are much more than come in, fix a server, fix a laptop, go home. You know, they're really embedded into the school, and I personally really, you know, I think they're absolutely essential in combating online safety issues. I think they bring so much to the table, and a lot that people probably don't think they do. People probably think that they respond to incidents when they see them and that's it, but it's far more complex and more in depth than that. So I kind of just wanted to look at, so what makes an IT technician, what makes them so important. And I say that IT technicians are our first line of defense in protecting our pupils against harm. And the reason I always say that, and I say that to my IT technicians when we have our meetings, I say it to, you know, our CEO, Joe, and others, is because they're sort of the first thing that we can actually control. And you may sit here and say, well, okay, well, probably what's more important is education, you know, parents doing, you know, parenting, but a lot of those things you can't control necessarily. But what we can control is the environment from a technical standpoint when pupils come in and use our equipment. And that's why I think they are the first line of defense, because no matter how much we educate and parent our pupils, there is always going to be scenarios where children are naturally inquisitive or pushing the boundary. And it's the job then of technicians, certainly in our trust, to pick up on that and report that to the right people. So if you look at what makes them important, well, I've put there 4 things. So if we think about the filtering, I think a lot of people have this idea that the filtering, you know, covers everything, and it really doesn't. Filtering is 95%, you know, useful in terms of being safe, but there's always going to be small pockets of the online world that filtering doesn't pick up. And one thing I will say about technicians is they are responsible for making sure that the right filtering is with the right people, so that pupils are only getting pupil filtering, but also updating the filtering as they go along, so that as new technologies come in or new websites, I think we can all, you know, think about things like Momo, for example, and why, you know, how that needed quick changes. Then that's part of the filtering. I think the most important one here is the monitoring, and the next slide I'm going to talk about what procedures we've put in place. But monitoring is vitally important in being, you know, having a reactive. We always want to be preventative, but sometimes you are going to have to be reactive, and that monitoring just gives us the heads up that could, you know, either someone who is either in the action of doing something that they shouldn't, or could give you a tip off of something they're about to do. And if we think about things like, you know, mental health and suicide, and how picking that up early is absolutely vital, then our technicians are so important in that. you know, it's not just filtering monitoring, but it's also, you know, all people should have the monitoring software on their sort of devices as per the sort of prevent duty in 2015 that clarified you needed monitoring software. For our technicians, we use Senso, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. But it's not just filtering monitoring they protect, it's things like infrastructure and making sure the infrastructure is up to date, and moving forward with the you know, changing world, and making sure that updates are done, patches are done, new equipment to, you know, where things are getting old, and maybe security risk. It's all those little things that come together to, you know, to create that protective boundary around the school and therefore our pupils. And it's the same with the software. You know, think about all the software they do, all the monitoring software, all the updates that they do to make sure software isn't vulnerable. All of it comes together and provides, as I say, a barrier around the school that will help, you know, keep children safe. And I think what is difficult about being an IT technician is we're very lucky in our trust. We have our own team and people can bounce ideas off of each other. I would imagine if anyone's listening to this webinar that there's going to be plenty out there that who maybe only have the one IT technician. They come in 1 day, 2 days a week. Who do they talk to about potential issues? As I say, we're very lucky that we have this big team. You know, an IT technician it can be a very lonely job when you're trying to, you know, fight across multiple fronts. So I think, you know, we need to sit back sometimes and see the value that IT technicians bring to a school, and how they can be really, as I say, vital in combating online safety issues. One of the things I haven't mentioned on there is, and it might be different for some schools, but I don't know about you, but when an IT technician like goes into a class, or they're almost like a hero, aren't they? I actually think children and pupils very much look up to IT technicians sometimes. You don't see them every day. They're not an authority figure as such, but they can be. I know when I go in and talk about monitoring, you know, to a whole class, you know, it's like, oh, Mr. Apogee polices the whole internet. So I think they're vital at almost creating a deterrent as well. So there's some of the reasons why, you know, and I'm sure there are many more of why IT technicians are so important. But I kind of want to look at the next stage, which is sort of what procedures have we put in place with our technicians, and why this is important. You know, we've spoken about the changing world, and therefore as a trust, we probably 16 months ago really sat down, myself and our trust leader, director of IT, and looked at, well, the world's changed, but have we changed with it? And what are we how are we supporting our technicians? But also, what additional things are our technicians going to have to put onto themselves? Well, so the first thing, and it's not a word I like to use, but it's accountability, because when it comes to safeguarding children, there's no sort of escape from it. You know, you have to be absolutely on it. You can't be a passenger. You know, you can't rely on, as I say earlier, about third-party filtering and monitoring companies to do it all for you. So we've placed a bit more accountability on our technicians, and part of that accountability is about, you know, we've set up our sort of what we call sort of our technician visits, so as such, where we look at to make sure that, you know, the senior techs that go in and see them will look at sort of the logs, make sure they're doing the checks that we've asked them to do, make sure they're recording it right, making sure that they know who the DSL is. And that's part of my online safety sort of audits that I do, is making sure people are aware who the DSL is, who to go with what problem, and that includes the technicians as well. We've increased the monitoring. So as I said about increasing their responsibility and accountability, I think previously IT technicians would maybe do monitoring checks more ad hoc basis, normally when the system maybe notified them, which is normally from the broadband company or filtering company, or maybe if they were asked to look into something, oh, you know, so and so said that they did this when they were in class. That's not the case anymore for our technicians. Our technicians are people who we've given them 30 minutes at the end of the day to do their checks. So that's filtering checks and monitoring checks. Some of our technicians have multiple schools and it can take up to 30 minutes. So that increased monitoring, which, when they do find something, we then introduced sort of log documents, so they can log their issues. They send them all on to the right people. And in terms of you looking at monitoring software, there is a little screenshot on there. It's only small, but that's the sort of thing our technicians will be looking for when they go through the screenshots that they get. So our monitoring system is called Senso, and I do think it's generally brilliant. Worked really well for us. If anyone wants to know more, I think it's just senso.org. But certainly something to look into. As I say, really, really helpful. We found it really useful over the last probably 16 to 18 months. But also we've looked at increasing their training, in terms of making it more bespoke to them. I think we're very guilty of just treating technicians like they have the same responsibility as everyone else, and they do to an extent, but they also go the extra mile with all the monitoring, all the filtering. So we introduced this year a bespoke safeguarding training just for them in the summer. Yes, they still did the usual one on inset day, but this was an additional one where we looked at looking for a clear and robust procedure, and that kind of safeguarding training allowed us to sort of demonstrate what we expected. We invited our safeguarding lead along with it, who came to speak to discuss what the signs might be, introduce scenarios, because what we found was technicians are sort of hidden away from the general safeguarding sometimes in schools. It's very much teachers at LSAs, but actually they play just a bigger role, and we didn't want them to miss any of the signs that a child could be suffering from any kind of abuse. So we certainly, and I think all the technicians we spoke to really found that useful to be able to kind of have that additional training and just make sure that, is there any deficiencies they have, and how can we help? We introduced fortnightly team meetings, so and coaching with our technicians. So every 2 weeks, their senior line manager will come and speak to them. It's not just about online safety, of course, it's the whole job role, but it has allowed us to sort of keep that one-to-one coaching up, where we talk to them about, okay, well, is there any safeguarding issues, anything you're concerned about? We can keep a running log of what issues they're facing, any training they might need, and it allows us then to focus on what we need to do with them. It's a place where a technician can talk to one of the seniors and ask any questions. And then collaboration. And if anyone has seen any of my other webinars, you'll know I'm a big believer in collaboration amongst stakeholders. And online safety is everyone's responsibility. So, and you've also probably heard me talk about online safety groups, but if you haven't, there are groups that talk about online safety, include staff, pupil, governor, and parent. But also, we've ensured that IT technicians are a part of each one of those groups. I think it's really important that they are in touch with what's being said from staff, from pupils, parent issues, and keep them in the loop, but also come to them with ideas of how they can make school safer. That group might come up with changes that are just physically not possible. And a technician's job there would say, actually, physically, we can't do that on the network. It's not technically possible. So it's really nice. It makes them feel connected to the schools. And I think it's just a really brilliant way for them to be involved and continue working with our children and parents and governors, and bringing everything together. So I just then finally want to look at sort of what makes an effective IT technician. What, if we're talking about what we've just said about needing, extra training, and the role changing. So if the role's changing, do we need to look for a different kind of person? I didn't, I'm not a traditional IT technician. I've done it for 10 years or 8, but I originally, was an LSA. I spent a lot of time in the classroom, wanted to be a teacher. And that's really helped me in my role, because I understand the issues probably a bit more than some of the technicians. A lot have come from, maybe the private sector where safeguard, or jobs where with IT that didn't involve safeguarding. So, we're looking for someone who's proactive, someone who, doesn't just doesn't just think, oh, it's general safeguarding, but someone who's going to be active when looking for concerns and vulnerabilities and bring them forward. There's something worse than having someone scared to bring something forward. So, at the rapid rate that technology is changing, a part of their role, it needs to be to keep up to date with the latest tech, but also what that might mean for online safety. So if you think about what's coming next, and I think in the previous webinar I talked about the metaverse, what's that bring? And that's what an IT technician might want to come to you as, if you're a DSL, and say, actually, this is coming, this is what my concern might be. Understanding, safeguarding on a deeper level. I think it's very easy to think that safeguarding is, say, yeah, I know all about safeguarding, but do you really understand? Do you understand when to, when a COP referral is needed? Do you understand it's about cyber choices and how, people who have got an interest in hacking might need that sort of solution, and what to look out for? Are you really clear that if a child's playing whatever, if you've got monitoring on laptops and they're up at 11 o'clock at night, that's not right, and how to deal with that and who to report that to. So I think it's, and that understanding can be taught, of course. I'm not expecting someone to come through the door like that, but that's something that we need to develop with technicians. To be flexible and adaptable, as I said, the world changes so quickly, and when I talk to my technicians, I talk about being flexible and adaptable. 1 minute you might be fixing something, the next minute, you've got to think about a way to protect your network, or whatever it might be, that, online safety issues that come up regularly, and you need to have that understanding. And the last one is kind of a general of all of them, really. It's about clearly understanding the role. I think that comes with your induction and job advertising. If you are, if you do need a new technician, or it's what are you actually asking for, and making them understand it very clearly. We've introduced a technician handbook that clearly defines the role, what's expected of them, how, what will we, what are the expectations and your responsibilities, accountability, and our role as well as senior leaders for the technician team. And I think that's really, really important that we get that across, that what is expected of them. So if it's monitoring every day, then that's that's clearly written and they understand that. And I think that altogether that really helps them be effective in their role, because they understand how they need to act with each sort of incident, or each part of the job. So I just kind of want to finish it there. And it's been this one's a good topic for me. I've spoke about IT technicians before. What I will say is, really, they are such a benefit for your school. And I know some schools, I know there's probably issues around finance and money, but I think Joe's probably going to talk about what other value they can bring. But when it comes to online safety, I do find them generally invaluable. The amount of my technicians that will come to me, as online safety, and say, I've seen this, Adam, what do you think? And it's not about, sometimes it's nothing, but actually for that 1 out of 100 that might be something serious, that's why they're vital, because they have the opportunity to stop something very serious happening. And I would really recommend that you really sort of invest in your technicians, and that doesn't just mean financially. That means training, supporting, all those things that you would do to to a teacher and their developing CPD. Support your technicians to be the best they can be, and there's a good chance that they will give you that back 10 times over. So thank you for watching. Joe, I think you've got some things that you want to sort of introduce, so I'm going to stop presenting and let you, if you've got any questions, or go ahead.
No, that was great, Adam. Thank you. As always, I was just going to say, really, I'm uploading the wrong thing now. Bear with me. It's always good when your computer just jumps to something you're not expecting it to show.
always technology, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I clicked on the wrong button, as I often do. But bear with me. I was just going to say, I like the fact that I think what I'm going to show ties in very much with what you've just said there, and how the role of technician now is it's just vital, not just, as you say, your focus today is online safety, but just schools full stop. Having that part-time person, that 1 day a week person, it just isn't enough now. We've got to have, I think the minimum amount is probably 3 days. Would you agree? If you can't have full time, I just think.
I mean, the amount of devices, even in schools that aren't in our trust that I go to, and you think, how do you manage all them on a day? and then do things like checks. If we're talking about online safety and fun, I don't think it's manageable anymore. I think you're right. I think 3 days is probably as a minimum. But they can bring so much, but Joe, more than anyone, how much, how invaluable they can be to making IT and ed tech in particular work. And without them, you're going to find it very difficult.
Yeah. You just, that's it. It's that functionality, isn't it? From day to day, in the classroom, but also everything they do behind the scenes.
Yeah, all the things that you don't see and you probably take for granted, as I say, all the monitoring, all the patches, all the updating of the laptops, all the little shortcuts that you want, all these little things that go on and on and on.
And to have that person there instantly, making that instant impact for you, because it often is, as well as we all know in education, it's that small error that goes wrong that you just can't see, and often the technician will come in and spot it, and you're up and running again within 5 minutes. If that person isn't there, it's so detrimental to the rest of your day. Your whole all that planning you've done over the weekend has gone out the window because you just can't access it because of one tiny thing. That they are just, I can't tell. Yeah, and I think, but most people would agree now, they're just so vital in school, not just for your online safety aspect, but generally as a member of your team, your staff team in schools. We can't do without them now.
Yeah, I didn't even touch on the fact that the remote learning side of things of Teams and making sure that's safe, and all those things that you probably don't see, all the policies they have to put in place to make sure people can't message each other, can't use email, can't call other students, all these little things that actually, if you had these in, you'd have so many problems and issues, it'd be unmanageable. So it's all those small things, isn't it, Joe, that all add up to actually a big thing.
Absolutely. And I think my slides really are going to probably cover on what you've really mentioned, but it's like you just said there. For me, it's about the fact that they're behind the scenes, they're creating those e-safety policies and procedures. Yourself, you've written, the new e-safety policy for us as a trust, alongside SLT, but you've done the bulk of that. Without your knowledge there, that wouldn't be as well written as it's going to be, our new policy that you put in place. Would you agree?
Well, yeah. There's a lot of, I think, with online safety, I think you do need an aspect of a technician's point of view. They know the technology that's there. Yes, there are some things that SLT are probably, better at writing, responding to incidents maybe and stuff like that. But in terms of what you've got in place, and identifying that in a policy, I think they're vital in as being part of that. So, yeah, absolutely agree, Joe.
I think it's right, and you're right. I'm saying, obviously, at your level, Adam, it's a different level that you're working at now. And as you mentioned, we're lucky in our trust because we've got a director of IT, you've got senior techs, technicians, and junior technicians. So you've got that real hierarchy within that structure. But it's all needed, and all that knowledge, is so important when we're looking at policies, not just what they're doing in school as well. And that they play a big part in ensuring teachers also have that knowledge. It's not just, they support everybody from SLT, like you mentioned, all stakeholders, teachers, pupils, it's everything. And
it's I think it's that what we said earlier about the changing of role and they become more facilitators and educators than they have ever been before. This whole idea that, oh, my laptop's not working, it's not just that, it's that ability to support teachers and go, actually, well, this is what you do, and this is how you use this, or this is about social media, whatever it might be. And they're there for more than just, my keyboard's not working. You can use them for far more than that, as you know, Joe.
Yeah, absolutely. And as I think, going back to all of the stakeholders, parents as well. There's a big role now to play with parents, especially with the online safety. But it's not just teachers now talking to parents. It's also about our IT technicians showing parents how to use devices, how to use them safely, what the tracking software looks like, how that filtering works when they're taking the devices go home. That it's such a changing, evolving role now. I think when we're looking at employing technicians, new technicians, that's something that they really need to take on board, isn't it? I think.
There's no shying away from talking to parents anymore. I think it's a scary one, because I think when I first had to do it, I think you've got that kind of worry, isn't it? Oh, parents, they're going to be awkward. And they just need help. They just need your support. They need your knowledge. How do I even log on? How do I get my child into remote learning? All those things that we probably take for granted a little bit, don't we? Because we're so embedded in technology. But it's the technician that people will come to and go, my password's not working. What do I do about social media? What do I do about this? And they almost have to be a fountain of knowledge across so many different aspects that people probably don't sometimes respect really how much knowledge they have to keep. They're not experts in one thing. It's 10, 15 different areas.
And as you just said as well, it's ever changing. It doesn't stay the same. Once you've learned it, that's it. You've got that knowledge for 2 or 3 years. It's evolving monthly, if not sometimes weekly, as you know. Yeah. And so you're constantly having to stay ahead of the game and be exactly what we're asking the children to be, and that's lifelong learners, but you're doing it because the field that you're in, even though it's so specialized, it's so vast now. So there's a lot, as we're saying here, that we really probably take for granted from our technicians, but I think, as you say, parents really do start really appreciate them now. But I think that's the part of the role that we've really had to develop. And I know when you talk to your technicians, you've had to have those discussions around that parent support. There, Adam. This next slide, I just kind of wanted to. It sort of reiterates what you were saying about it. Technicians aren't just about that break and fix role anymore either. They do all of these things. It's such a broad spectrum. So installing, troubleshooting, maintaining, repairing, there's so many different aspects. And I think when I started to I've gone into this role of EdTech demonstrator, it's not until I've gone into this I fully appreciated it as a teacher myself, all of the things that are going on behind the scenes that we just don't see, that, as you say, are maintained probably late into the evening and checked later on in the day, because you need to do those checks. It's vital, not just for online safety, but for everything else to function properly within the systems that we've got in place now.
That's not even considering things like clubs and other groups that they help and support and join in with, and they do so much, and we hopefully we show that we value that from them, Joe, and I hope they feel that way in our trust at least.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you say, we've even got I know we've got our own trust help desk as well, but actually sitting there on a help desk and supporting people over the phone, that isn't an easy thing to do, is it? Because often you're trying to, you've got all those questions to ask that person, because all systems, as you know, all computing systems in schools are completely different, and
it's a technician's worst nightmare, I think, is supporting over the phone. It is so difficult. We know the language we use, but how often do you get people come up to you and go, it just won't work? And somehow from that we have to diagnose what doesn't work, and do that in a friendly and nice way, and make the person feel like they're not an idiot. You know what I mean? It's that kind of, on top of that, we allowed our parents to email the help desk. And you talk about parents earlier, and then they're dealing with that side as well. So, yeah, lots to it.
Absolutely, and I think in schools now, and I know you know all this already, but technicians often do specialise, and they've either become a server technician, as you can see here, or a network technician. In schools, we expect our technicians to be take on all of these roles, not just one of those particular roles. They cover all of these aspects. So, as you say, it's huge.
There's a joke in the tech world, which is, if it's got a plug, it's our responsibility.
Yes, absolutely. And like you say, it's not just that now. It's also obviously that huge responsibility of online safety as well. And that's why I also added these images of one of our senior techs here, because and as you mentioned, it's also about working with the pupils too. It's not just, it's on every level now, a stakeholder, but it's also actually at the chalk face with the pupils occasionally, supporting them and helping them to understand and appreciate, what's going on behind the scenes as well. But I think I just wanted to mention that, there's lots of pros and cons too, but I think, again, just reiterating what you said, it's about computer technology is such a growing field now. It's actually really nice for our pupils to see that this is a really key job role and one of those future job roles that's going to grow and grow, and actually something that they can take on board. So it's nice. Obviously, they see teaching roles and they see, TAs and support staff and head teachers. But the school technician is also a role, a job role that they can take on board.
Yeah, no, I think IT is, I think it's always in the top 10 most wanted fields generally anyway, even if you wanted to specialize and not go into a school necessarily. But I think it also goes back to that, what we said about facilitating and educating. We know the world is becoming more AI dominated. That's the reality is, and a lot of stuff now, a lot of the tasks are automated, but there are always people that need to facilitate those automated tasks, if that makes sense. And that's where the job's going, is how do you set them up to be effective, rather than maybe doing them. The days of manually installing 30 computers are hopefully for most people are long gone, but you've still got to set up the systems to make that happen, and that takes time. It's just, it's constantly growing and changing its kind of landscape.
Yeah, and like you say, the demand now is huge for technicians too, isn't it? It's going to be one of those jobs that is always in high demand moving forward. I think it's not necessarily one of the cons to being a technician, but the fact is now you've got to stay consistently up to date with the latest technologies as well out there, and make sure that you're also able to have the ability to troubleshoot and find, like we said earlier, find problems, solve problems, which can be sometimes quite frustrating, especially if you've got to research and spend a little bit more time on that particular problem that you're faced with. So it's a really challenging job, but a really fulfilling one, but one where, as you mentioned, you've really got to be flexible and approachable and be able to stay ahead of the game. And I think now, I just wanted to finish on this slide with saying that the role is so important to schools. It really needs to be full time, because it does provide that instant support for staff, for anybody working in school, because obviously technology, it's great, but it obviously does have those moments where it doesn't work. So we need technicians to maintain those systems and the networks. We need them to be there for online safety issues, but also to have that knowledge about the online safety as well, about cybersecurity, the tracking and filtering, as you've mentioned, but also to have those really good, strong relationships with staff and pupils, so that they feel they can obviously go and, talk to you as well. Which I know in our trust we've got, and it works really well. And as I've mentioned here, I've highlighted, you are such key members of staff now in any school setting that, and like you say, I hope, or I know all of our technicians feel valued, but I hope the message there that you've given today about just how important their knowledge is with online safety, is valued from this today, but also hopefully people understand that, it's just such a bigger picture now, and we need to really make sure that schools are thinking about how to embed that role moving forward and extend hours as much as they can. Is there anything you'd like to add there, Adam? I know I've done a lot of talking there.
No, I was only going to add to that point that you've just said about, the importance, but, as I've said earlier, it's about investing in them. You don't employ a teacher and then don't do any CPD with them. It's the same aspect, and you might not understand that CPD, and that's why I talk about being proactive. The people we're looking for, people that are going to come to us and say, I need this training. It's difficult, if you're a senior leader, how do you know what an IT technician necessarily needs? But I will say, that support them in that. You would for your teachers. You send your LSAs on courses for interventions. you need to be investing in your IT technicians as well, because there'll be a sense of belonging. You're going to get, you know, all the benefits that you would with any other job in the school about, you know, work, you know, to motivation and all those things that we know come from investing and showing that supportive side. So I really do would recommend really investing in them.
Absolutely. And I was just going to finish on this. I know you obviously know where this is, Adam, the Microsoft Learn Educator Centre, but it's not just, I just wanted to reiterate that point, it's not just for teachers. This is also for many different roles now, including technicians. You know, there's lots of different courses linked to this that are absolutely ideal for technicians, you know, to gain extra understanding. So, you know, school leaders can provide that CPD through the Learn platform as well. So I just wanted to sort of highlight that there, you know, in case people are thinking, well, where can I give that support? Where are those extra courses that are also free? These are free courses that you can provide. It's just about giving, I suppose it's that time, isn't it? Just to make sure that they are able to complete those courses as and when. But, you know, just knowing that we're giving that support to technicians also, I think, is really appreciated too. So I think that's everything I wanted to add there. But Adam, as always, thank you so much for your time today. I'm really grateful, and thank you for producing that great presentation there. Is there anything you want to add before?
No, Joe, just thank you for having me. I think, you know, this is the last one I'm doing for a little bit, but I hope that, you know, the ones I have done and this one today, you know, I hope people find it useful. And as always, you know, my email's on the end of each of the presentations. By all means, you know, whether you're part of our trust, not part of our trust, please get in touch if you need anything, and we'll try and support you as best as we can. Yeah, absolutely. And I'll just finish with just showing people where the EdTech demo program is if they are they do think they might need a little bit of support. Remember, it's school-to-school support, so please contact us. I will just share my screen very quickly now and show you where that is. So if you go to your web browser and just type in the EdTech Demonstrator program, and you can click on either rapid support, which gives you 3 hours of support, or you can go to the request long-term support here, and you can get between 6 and 30 hours of support. What's nice as well is they've also got drop-in surgeries as well. So if you just wanted very quick advice, again, you can use that tab there. But please feel free to contact us. I think it's about 42 schools in the programme, so we're just one of them. If you do want to contact me or Adam, then if you just type in Kidworth CV Primary School, you'll be able to, you'll be directed to us, and then we'll contact you and we'll see what we can do to help. So thanks again for joining us, and we'll hopefully see you soon for some of our other webinars that are coming up next week. Feel free to go to the Discovery School website to have a look at what's coming up. And thanks again.